Hello everyone, and I just wanted to post this PowerPoint as I promised that I would. It's how to add citations to your paper, and so we're going to go through it rather quickly, because you can read at your leisure, but I wanted to take this time to review some things with you. Okay, let's get started. The first is, what do I mean by citing information? What I mean is when you take an outside source and you find some interesting information in that source and you want to include that source in your paper as support for your argument, then you have to include that information correctly, okay? There are two different ways you can do it, and what we call them is a direct quote, which is this right here. We call it a direct quote, or we call it an indirect quote. Okay, now let's go over the differences between them. A direct quote is when you take someone's exact words and you put those in quotation marks to indicate that you are borrowing their direct words. And you add, the information in front by adding the author's name, because you have to say who that person is that you're getting those words from. That's one way. The other way is really done in two different ways. Okay, the first is a paraphrase. Okay, and here's that word right here. Okay, a paraphrase is when you take several sentences and you reword the information that you found in those sentences. Let me say it again. You take several sentences. So what I try to tell my students is try to take at least 4. And you get a good understanding of what those sentences are saying, and then you type it as you understand it. That's a paraphrase. You read the words from 4 sentences, at least 4. You get a clear understanding of what those sentences are discussing. And then in your own words, you put what you saw or what you understood from what you read. A summary is different. A summary, you need to take quite a bit of information. I usually tell my students 5 to 8 sentences. Okay, you take those sentences, and what you do with those sentences is you condense those sentences. So instead of it being 5 sentences, you condense it to 1. Or instead of it being 8 sentences, you condense it to 2. But what you're doing is you're taking a body of information and you're condensing it. You're making it less. That's what we mean by a summary. You're just giving me the general idea of what that piece of information was about. No matter how you do it, whether you do it with a direct quote where you get all of the words and you copy them exactly, or whether you get a paraphrase, which means you've taken a smaller bit of information and you are rewording it in your own words, or whether you take a summary, a larger amount of information, and you condense it to a smaller amount of information. Whichever of the 3 you do, you still have to cite that information. You still have to give credit, and I say that right here. You still have to give credit to the person and the place where you got that information from. Okay, you see where I'm pointing here? You still have to give credit to the person or the place where you got the information from. On to the next slide and see what happens. How can you do this? Because we usually get our sources from electronic databases, sometimes you will find an article that may not have an author's name. In truth, you would rather find an article with an author's name because it makes citing easier, but just say if you don't. Now, let me caution you though, if you find an article and it doesn't have an author's name or a year of publication, stay away from that article. Because you want a reliable source, you want a replicable source. So you do want a source where you can trace that information back, and those people are considered people who you can trust. Okay, because people are adding things to the internet all the time. You can add something to the internet, but you want to get information that we consider scholarly, which means that information has been researched and proven. Okay, all right, so here's our first example. I have an article here and it does not have an author's name. Well, how am I going to include the information that I found in this article? If you notice, at first I tell you the title of the article, and I put that title in quotation marks, because titles of articles go in quotation marks. So this is the title of the article I found. What you see over here in 2008, that's the year that the article was published. Okay, then right here I just add a word that that kind of joins my quote to its author. So I says the Bissell is a great product, which is the article, states, and I can say states, explains, examines, reports. It's a list of those type words. So you include that word, and then I know what will follow will be exact words from that article. Bissell products were designed for heavy duty use. All right, so I have that whole quote here. I put it in quotation marks because I copied it exactly, and then I end it with the page number. That's the P, and then that's the page number. It was on page 5. Now, sometimes electronic sources don't always have page numbers. So if it doesn't have a page number, then you have to use a paragraph number. Okay, you have to tell the reader what paragraph you got this information from. So on our next example of using it with a paragraph number. So I tell you, if you find a website and the source of information does not have a page number, then you have to use a paragraph number. So I paraphrased it this time. The first time I directly quoted the information I found from Bissell. This time I've decided I'm going to paraphrase it. So here it is what I say. The Bissell website, and I just say the Bissell website, states that consumers constantly buy its products due to excellent performance. And then I do a paragraph number. Now notice here in my first example, there was an article that was entitled Bissell. But this time it is not an article, it's a whole website. Because sometimes you'll go to certain websites and that's just what they are. If you're getting information about health issues, more than likely you will find just a website. Because you may go on, I don't know, the public safety website. So if that's the case, this is how you do it. You tell me the title of that website, the Bissell website. And because it's more than likely not going to be page numbers on their website, it's just the article, then I put the paragraph I got it from. Paragraph 1. Okay, I got that from paragraph 1. You see how I did it? P-A-R-A period stands for paragraph 1. Okay, in the above example, you use the website's name to introduce the paraphrase or summary. If that website or if that article has what we call headings, because you know how sometimes you will see these different titles for headings, then you discuss or you include the title of that heading. So that's what I've done right here. And I say to you, if your article has headings, please include the heading in front of the paragraph number. Okay, so I'm supposedly getting this out of the section called performance. So I said performance section, comma, then I put the paragraph and then I put the number. All right. Okay, so far, let's recap. We've gone over how to include information from an internet article that may not have an author. And we've included how to paraphrase or summarize information from a website where there will be no author. And then we've discussed how to use either a page number or a paragraph number based on the information you are obtaining. All right, so let's go to the next one. And then this one is adding information from a source when the author's name is listed and the article or book has page numbers. This is the easiest one. That's why I'm always saying try to find resources that the author's name is listed, because it just makes things so much easier. So in this case, my author's name is James Brown. So I say his whole name, James Brown, the year his work was published. Notice I don't have the work, I just have the year it was published. It was published in 1980, states, and I tell you what he said. I copied this word for word, so I put in quotation marks. Okay, you notice that? And I got it from page 25. So I tell you the page number. I got this from page 25. All right, and then I tell you, in the above example, you use the writer's name to introduce the quote, but you also put the year the document or the book was published. You put the page number at the end of the quote. And then I tell you in red, if you are getting this information off the internet and you do not see a date at the top of the page, scroll down to the bottom, because sometimes the reference information is at the very end of the article. If you don't see that information, let me say again, you may want to choose another article. All right, example for adding a paraphrase this time when there is an author's name. So notice the difference. I don't have any quotation marks. Okay, I don't have any quotation marks here because I'm not copying in this word for word. So I said James Brown, still his name, 1980, the year the document was published. And then this time I say suggest. And here's the big word that lets me know what you're about to tell me afterwards is not a direct quote. The word that. He suggests that. And then he goes on to say what the consumers are, and then he gives us the page number. Just that little word that makes a difference in indicating whether or not you have a direct quote or if you have what we call an indirect quote. All right, and notice what I say here. In the above example, you use the writer's name to introduce the quote, but you also put the year the book was published. You put the page number at the end of the paraphrase or summary. Note this, if you are getting this information from the internet, again, scroll down. Now, let me go back and reiterate. Even if you paraphrase or summarize this information, you still need to include the writer's name. You have to give that person credit for his or her work. You cannot pretend that this work does not belong to somebody else. You have to include the citation information. Okay, on the next slide, I tell you, example for added information when an author's name is listed and the article does not have a page number, but it has paragraphs. And you can see it's the same what we did with the magazine article or the website. You just put PARA period page 25. Same thing. It's just you put in paragraph, because sometimes you may find an article on the internet that has an author's name, but again, it doesn't have page numbers because it's in an electronic format, and most times they do not include page numbers, but you have the paragraphs. All right, in the above example, you use the writer's name to introduce the quote, like you did last time. You put the year that the document was published, like you did the last time. You put the paragraph number at the end of the quote. All right, you can also use the paragraph symbol instead of paragraph. All right, if your article has headings, just like before, you put the heading where you got it from and you put the paragraph number. Now, what I say here, note, if you're going to cite more information from the same author a second time in the same paragraph, this is what I'm reading in red. You do not have to put the year of publication or the author's full name again. This time you just put his last name, and then you go ahead and say whatever you're going to say. So now I give you an example of what I mean. I've already used Mr. Brown's name in my paragraph. So I'm not going to include all of this information from Mr. Brown again. That's too much. So now I just say Brown further states. This word further will let my reader know I'm talking about this same Brown. I'm just telling you something else he said. So Brown further states, and I put what he further stated, and in this case, I directly cited it. Okay, I put what he said, and then I put the page where I got it from. All right? An example when there is an author's name with no year of publication, because sometimes you may find an author's name, but you may not find the year that it was published, okay? You use the author's name, just like you have before, but you put in parentheses N period D period, because that signifies that there was no date. That's all that stands for, no date. Then you use the verb to connect the two together. You put your quote, and in this case I directly quoted it, and you put the page number that you got it from. Okay, this is if you cannot find a year of publication. Example for putting the quote first and the author's information last. So far I've shown you how to do it if you put the author's name first. But sometimes for effect, you may want to put the quote first and then the author's name. So if that's the case, I start off with the quote. And if you see this in quotation marks, that's why we call it a quote. It's in quotation marks, which means I copied this word from word, but I still have to give Brown credit. So in parentheses, right after I finish my quote, in parentheses, I put Brown, then I put the comma, I put the year of publication, and I put the page where I got it from. I put his name, I put the year of publication, and I put the page where I got it from. Okay? In the above example, you do not use the author's name as an introduction for the quote, but you put his name at the end of the quote by including his name, the year the work was published, and the page number or paragraph number, whichever applies. All right, and then here's what I said. Do not forget that you do not have to mention the year of publication again if you cite this author a second time in the same paragraph. But you do have to include that information if you cite him again in a whole new paragraph. Okay, if you cite him again in if you cited him in your second paragraph, then you cite him again in your fourth paragraph, you have to put the information. But if you're citing him twice in paragraph 2, the second time you don't put all of the information, you just put his name. Example for using information when there are 2 authors. Okay, this time I'm not going to put a first name because there are 2 authors. So I just use 2 last names, okay, because you don't want to, it gets confusing when you start adding too much. So this time Darwin is writing this article with Brown. So I put both their names and I spell out the word and. I put the year publication. I put they're suggesting this or stating this or explaining this or proclaim, whatever you want to use. I put the quote in quotation marks because I copied this word for word from these men. And then I put the page number where I got this information from. Okay. Again, I put both of their names. I spell out the and. I put the year of publication. I go on and put my citation. And then I put the page where I got it from. Then I give you a little note here. If you use more information from these 2 authors within the same paragraph, you don't put the year again. You just have to use their names and the page number or paragraph number, whichever applies. However, if you cite them again in a different paragraph, then you have to go back and add all of the information. So here's an example of if you do it twice in the same paragraph. Darwin and Brown state. The first time I said they suggest. This time I said they state. And then I go on and tell you what they state, and I put the page number. All right, I noticed, but I'm hoping that this will help you some. Example for using the 2 authors when it's a summary or paraphrase. It's the same type thing. The only difference is you don't see quotation marks because I'm not getting their information word for word. And I put suggest, and then the key word there, that. That's the key word that makes the difference. I say that, and then I tell you what I'm going to tell you, and I put the page number. If there's no page number, what do I put? And I know you know by now. You put the paragraph number. If the paragraph has a section above it, a section title, you put the section title and the paragraph. All right, and then here's the example for if you want to put the citation first and their names last. Okay. Now notice when I put their names last and I put it in parentheses, I don't spell out and. I use the and sign. I don't spell out and if I put their names last. I use the and sign. All right. Example for using information when there are more than 2 authors. Let's say you have 3. You use all of their names in the lead-in citation. Darwin, Brown, and Jones. I put the year. This is a paraphrase, so I put, no, I'm sorry, this is a direct quote. So I put suggest. I put it in quotation marks because I borrowed their words exactly, and I put the page number. And then I give you a note. After you state all 3 authors' names the first time, you do not have to state all 3 of their names again in the same paragraph or in the rest of the paper. You just start saying Darwin, which is the first author's name, and then you say et al. And this let me know that these are these 3 gentlemen. Okay, you're referring to these 3 gentlemen. Darwin et al. But you still have to state the page number and the paragraph or paragraph number where you got your information from. You do not have to include the publication date if you cite them a second time in the same paragraph. But you will always need to put a page number or a paragraph number for where you got your information from. All right, when you conduct an interview with a person. Now, let me say this. We would prefer you not do this because these people, although they may be professionals in their field, we prefer you not do this because we consider them not to be a solid source because there's no way for us to go back and research and determine if they told you what you say they told you. Okay, because since it's a personal communication, you're not giving me a phone number for them or an email address for them. So I just have to take your word that you spoke to these people and they told you this, or I have to take your word that they're even who you say they are. So we ask you, if you can, try not to use personal communications, because there's so much information out there. You don't necessarily have to use a personal communication. But, you know, so in my class, I would prefer you not use a personal communication, that you go and get the art, you know, you get resources from databases or, you know, articles that these people have written. But if you use a personal communication for another class, this is how you do it. Let's say we're pretending I'm your personal communication. So Kayla Ward said, you will, of course, copy down exactly what I said. Okay, that's in quotation marks. You'll put this was a personal communication. You'll put a comma and you'll put the day and year that you spoke to me. The day and year that you spoke to me. But let's say you want to do a paraphrase of what I said and you want to put me at the end. Then you just do like you did the other ones. You will state the information here. This is a paraphrase of obviously what information you got from me. Then in parentheses, you will put K Ward. You don't spell my name out. You just put K Ward, and then you put it was a personal communication, and then the year and the date and year that you spoke to me. All right. Any questions about that? All right. There are several other sources, so many, because sometimes you're citing a source within a source. If that is the case, then you will need to either look in your APA textbook for an example, or you can go to this website that I posted here. Okay, this website right here. And that is very current. They keep that really current. So if you have any questions about anything I've said, you know you can always ask me. Review the PowerPoint. Take your time and go through your work, because I know you can do it. It takes time. It's not hard to do. It's just time consuming. Okay?